Boker Tov to everybody. I want to dedicate this Dvar Torah to everybody in our shul, also to the founding members, Zichronam Tzadikim Lebracha. On Lech, we are actually ushering in the 50th year of the founding of the shul, which was founded in 1973. The Minyanam in the throes of the Yom Kippur War, where our founders wanted to uplift the spirits of the people. There was a terrible depression in Eretz Yisrael at the time, and here we are enjoying the fruits of the pioneering labors. And Be'ezrat Hashem, this is a time also to pray, to daven, first of all to thank Hashem, and to daven that our shul, our beloved congregation, will go mechayil lechayil, from strength to strength. Again, this year, Tafshin Pei Gimel, we've started off a series on like speaking a little about the history and the yortzites of the Gedolim who passed away on this during this week. Some of them on Shabbatot, and then to speak a little bit about them, and also to connect things that they've said or that they've written on the Parsha. So even though on Shabbat itself, of Parshat Lecha is the yortzeit of the Rosh Yeshiva, one of the Rosh Yeshivot of Mir, Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, I chose to speak about the Rosh, the famous Rabbeinu Asher ben Yechiel, who was one of the Rishonim. And as you can see, he was born in 1240 and passed away in 1327. So a little bit about the Rosh, and a comment that he made on his work on the Parsha Tashavua. The Rosh stands for an acronym from Rabbi Asher ben Yechiel. Was born in Ashkenaz, in other words, Germany, in the city of Koblenz in 1240. His father was a great Talmid Chacham, and he came from a very, very illustrious family. They traced a lot of their family to Rav Gershon Maor Gola, and they were known as the family of the Holy Ones. In other words, because a lot of the family members gave up their lives in Kiddush Hashem during those terrible times in the 12th, 13th, 14th century, in which there was pogroms in Germany, in France, the Crusades, etc. So yes, the Rosh was born in Koblenz, but he didn't stay in Ashkenaz. What he did was, in his youth, he became familiar with the method of learning of the Baalei Tosafot. The Tosafot are all those in the French school who were part of the yeshivot and followed like Rashi. And their system of learning Torah was very, very analytical, very comparing all parts of the Talmud, dissecting those matters. He was very, very taken to this methodology. It wasn't just a matter of codifying, but like deep analysis. So what he did was he oscillated the whole time. He traveled the whole time between France and between Germany. And then he finally came and stayed in Germany, and he became a big Talmid of the famous Marami Rothenburg, who we know was in the year 1286. What he does, he was arrested, put into prison by a wicked king called King Rudolph. It all started off that in 1283 in Magensa, there was a rumor that obviously like a blood libel, that Jews captured, that they took a Christian child, that they killed him in order to take his blood and to use it for matzot. And that king, who was supposed to, so to speak, King Rudolph, to be he fancied himself as like a protector of the Jew. He actually turned a blind eye to the terrible massacres of the Jews. And even though he received bribes in order to help them, he took the bribes but did nothing. And so after 1283, a lot of the Jews in Germany like saw the writing in the wall, and they decided to immigrate. And no matter what the threats were, the taxes, etc., of King Rudolf, he couldn't stop the flow of immigration. And one of the people who also wanted to flee Germany at the time was the Maharam Rottenburg, Rab Meir ben Rab Baruch of Rottenburg. And he, also like in the stealth of the night, what he did was he went out, and in 1286, so 3 years after those continued pogroms and massacres, 1286, he tried to escape, and what he did was he got to a certain place, and one of the apostates, Shem Rashaim Yirkav, his name was Kneip. And in the district of Lombardy, he sort of recognized the Rami Rottenburg. He sort of gave information to the local bishop, and we passed on to the King Rudolf, and he was put into prison and then taken to the castle of Eisenheim. The Rosh, who was his favorite Talmud, wanted and organized to try to redeem, to give a ransom money. And as we know from historical Yam Shlomo Shlomo and others, that the Maharami Rottenburg forbade it, even though that the Rosh inherited a lot of money, was like very wealthy, and he organized the community to pay for the Maharami Rottenburg. The Maharami Rottenburg said, under no account, because that will just encourage more kidnappings, and the Jews, in any case, are just like wilting under all the taxes, so you mustn't do it. Anyway, King Rudolf died 4 years later. About 5 years later, in 1291. And then there was again a fight of succession who would take over. There was a person who, his name was King Albrecht, who took over, and whilst there was now still sort of the Rosh was trying to organize some sort of not exorbitant ransom, but something which was more or less like fair in inverted commas. In the meantime, what he did was the Maharami Rottenburg died in prison, and what happened was that his body wasn't released. It was only released much years later. But the Rosh didn't want the same thing to happen to him, and again he was held sort of accountable to pay the money to the for the ransom of the body, even though he sort of he just died. Why should he now pay? But upon him, he saw the writing on the wall, and he decided that he was going to leave Germany, Ashkenaz. So he started off a whole series of migrations. Firstly to Savoy in Italy. Savoy then in Italy was the head of Savoy was in good relationships with King Albrecht. So Rosh thought, when he heard of this, he thought, well, he'll turn him over. So he proceeded to go south to to the area of Provincia, which is sort of like the border of France and Spain, where there were tremendous Talmidei Chachamim over there. They all welcomed him, the Rosh, and he was asked sort of to get involved in an opinion. There was a controversy over there about people were already turning a lot to philosophy at the expense of being lax in mitzvot, and they wanted him to give his opinion. And the Rosh said, listen, I'm just a newcomer over here. You've opened up your arms to me. You've given me hospitality and refuge. I'm not getting involved because I don't think it's correct. So he moved from there and proceeded south to Spain, arriving in Barcelona in 1303. So he was now 63 when he arrived, because he was born 1240. And he met over there the great Talmid Chacham, the head of the Spanish community, the Rashba, Rav Shlomo ben Aderet, and then there was a position which was vacant in Toledo. They wanted him to be the Dayan and the leader in Toledo, which accepted in 1304. He already actually had a son, Yehuda, who preceded him and had gone to Spain. So that was the Rosh was held in tremendous esteem in Spain. And what he did was he first of all, just let me tell you some of his psakim, some of the things that he enacted in Spain. One of the things is that he was, first of all, he was against forced divorce, which was in practice then. He was against like Chazanim, who had a nice voice but weren't like of good character and reputation. He was against he fought against the Jews, Jews in the nobility who copied the Christians, and the Christian practice was that when a person died, he left all his estate, the entire estate, to his elder son. So these are some of the things that he combated. And he wrote a lot of commentaries on the Talmud and Piskei Halacha. He wrote a book called Orchot Rosh on ethical and moral behavior in Yirat Shamayim. He wrote Perushim Mishnayot, and he wrote also a little bit on the Chumash. He passed away about 70 days after his wife Yuta. She passed away more or less on, when was it? She passed away more or less on Tammuz, and he passed away in 1327. 1327 in Toledo. I just want to say I forgot to mention that Rosh, they came from a very the Spanish, French and German Ashkenazic Jewry were known as la Hasidim. They were, in their practice of halacha and in their daily lives, they were known for the unbelievable levels of piety. One cannot, maybe one needs just one time to devote a series on the practices of the French, German Jewish community, who are always steeped mamash in piety. And part of their piety, the story is also that the Rosh's mother was warned in a dream by her husband, who passed away beforehand, that there was going to be a pogrom. She, at a certain time, she left the city with her kids, but she went back in the morning to try and retrieve some of the possessions, and that when she was killed. So, but the Rosh was an amazing person, and he's one of the three pillars on which the Shulchan Aruch based all his Piskei Halacha. The Shulchan Aruch said, I'm taking three of the great pillars of Jewry, the Rambam, Maimonides, the Rib, Rav Yitzchak Elfasi, and the third one was the Rosh. What made the Rosh so unique was that because he came from Germany and he had adapted also the French system of learning, and he came to Spain, so he really was a person who combined and understood all the practices of Jewry. In other words, the Spanish school that he got to understand later, the French school, the German school. And then in his writing, he speaks about how that actually the Minhagim of Ashkenaz are the most worthy, because you must remember the first wave of exiles going to Rome were in that area. So therefore, what Jews did had a tremendous weight, and that's why the Shulchan Aruch looked at what the Rosh Paskin as being like a great pillar in Piskei Halacha. Okay, so let us now just say a comment on the Rosh on Parshat Shavua. Hashem promises Abraham in the famous Brit Ben Abtarim, in the covenant of pieces. Hashem promises Abraham a couple of things. Number one, that he himself will have children. Number two, that he will inherit Eretz Israel. that the Jewish people, prior to inheriting Eretz Yisrael, will go into exile, which afterwards turned out to be in Mitzrayim, and that Hashem will, that Hashem, the Jewish people, is Hashem's people. All these things were promised to Abraham. So when Hashem says, you know what, you'll have children will come from you. So Abraham is taken aback and he says, well, what? You know, Hashem says to him, I'm going to give you a lot of reward. Abraham says, but what can you give me? I'm already an old man, and what's there already to give me? I haven't got any offspring. And Hashem says, no, you know what? Your manager, Eliezer, he's not going to continue your ways. I'm going to give you your own son. And Hashem then takes him out and he says, look at the stars. Rashi says, what is he trying to say? Look at the stars. In other words, go beyond your mazal, beyond your, because I'm going to, according to the laws of mazal, you shouldn't have children, but you're going to be above mazal. And you're going to have children, even in this miraculous way. So when Abraham hears this, it says that it says vehemin b'Hashem, that he had emunah, vayachshaveha lo letzedakah. That means, according to Rashi, that because he showed emunah in Hashem's promise, so it's considered vayachshaveha lo. Hashem considered it as an act of a thought of tzedakah, of great righteousness. The Ramban takes issue with Rashi and he says, why should this be the fact that Abraham believed in Hashem's promise? Why is that an act of righteousness? I mean, Abraham's a Navi, and as the Ramban says, a Navi is prepared to sacrifice his son when he hears Hashem to take Yitzchak. Has he got a problem to believe in Hashem's promise that he will give him offspring? Why should it be considered to be a great act of righteousness? A person has to believe in emunah and badai. A person like has to have emunah, and a person like Abraham badai is full of emunah. He's one of the founder of the Jewish people. So there's an interesting targum, and I'm combining it with the El Sheikh, that Rav Moshe Elshach in Tzfat in the 6th century, he says, now what was righteous about this emunah of Hashem, of Abraham Avinu, is that Hashem said to Abraham as follows, look at the stars, and ko yiyeh zarecha, so will your seed be. Now the word yihye, will be, makes up the gematria of 30. Yud is 10, Hey is 5, Yud is 10, and Hey is 5. Yihye. So Hashem was promising, this is what the Midrash says, that I'm going to guarantee you that your offspring will be very, very prominent. There'll be at least in every single generation 30 stars, 30 people who are absolute tzaddikim. And he had emunah. And the Elshach says that the greatness of this emunah is that Abraham Avinu could have started arguing with Hashem. And how can that be? There's free will. How can you say that? And what will happen if there's free will and people won't be tzaddikim? So he could have started off a whole philosophical dialogue and argument with Hashem. And now Hashem said to him, there'll be at least 30 people like the stars in any generation. Abraham didn't know how it's going to work out according to the principles of Hashem having given man free will, but he kept quiet and he had emunah. The Rosh now, on the other hand, the Rosh says that that what it means is like this. He says that that the word tzedakah we translate usually as righteousness, or tzedakah as charity. He says that's not what the word only means. The word tzedakah itself means the righteousness of emunah. And he says as follows, when the prophet tells us, the famous pasuk, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah, Zion ultimately will be redeemed through righteousness, through justice. Sorry, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh. It will be redeemed through through justice, mishpat. Veshabeha, and her returnees, bitzdaka. It doesn't mean that her returnees will cause the redemption because of the tzedakah that they give. But the words veshabeha bitzdaka means, the word tzedakah means emunah. And her returnees will bring about the geula with the righteousness, not of the body of giving tzedakah, but the righteousness of their belief in the geula, in other words, their righteousness of emunah. And therefore, the pasuk according to the Rosh means like this: Hashem promised Abraham Avinu that what he should have is he's going to have children. He's going to have children even who are going to be righteous, even though that contradicts free will. And Abraham accepted, and he had full faith, and that's what it means. Vayachshaveha, Hashem considered it something chashuv, something which is noble, something which is significant, something which is decisive. What did he think was something decisive and supreme? Tzedakah. The tzedakah, the righteousness, i.e. not the righteousness of tzedakah, but the righteousness of emunah that Abraham Avinu had, even though he was filled with a lot of questions. And that Perush of the Rosh is actually how he lived his whole life. It's unbelievable, of course, emunah, and we wish it all on ourselves. Shabbat shalom to everyone.